I don't think yesterday morning, when we were discussing this impending vote in the House of Commons, the government had made a big U-turn to say existing claimants of personal independence payments wouldn't lose them. Was that going to be enough? I think we were imagining quite what a chaotic day was in store.
You couldn't. It's killing political satire. That's why, isn't it? I mean, to actually pull that key section of the bill, actually pull it, emasculate, gut your own bill right at the last minute.
After the Cabinet Minister had opened the debate saying it was in.
I know, it's sort of
humiliation for her, humiliation for the Chancellor, and then Stephen Timms, a decent bloke, Minister of State, actually, we're withdrawing it. You to 90 minutes later in the Commons. I thought, can I believe... Did he really just say that? And still, 50 MPs rebel. What they could have done a week ago, said, we haven't got this right, and just postpone the entire thing until the autumn. And it would have gone away last week, and they'd get the whole summer to think it through properly, because this has been badly thought through from beginning to end. And instead, they've got the worst of all worlds. They've saved no money. The reputation is in tatters. This is chaos with a capital C. It's worse, frankly, than Boris Johnson at his nadir.
Well, really steady on there. No, it's absolutely terrible. It's like watching a crash where more and more cars are going into the wreckage and more people are getting injured politically in the government. But the plus side, if you're looking for a plus, is PIP is protected for those who are going to lose it or those who might qualify down the line but said, it doesn't really matter about you, we don't care anymore. And if you're... I don't want to be kind of Pollyanna about it and look excessively optimistic, because it is humiliating for the Prime Minister and the government. But maybe it's the moment they take stock and say it's going to be hard going forward to win back trust and confidence and appear competent. But maybe this is the nadir, and you climb up now and you realise you can't just make ill-thought-out policies designed to save money without wondering about the impact and ignoring lots of other Labour MPs who've been elected, some disabled, as we saw, others just know the impact on the ground of, in the Treasury they can say we want to save £5 billion, that's all right, but they can put names and faces and lives to the people who be crushed by that.
It's the end of serious welfare reform in this Parliament.
It's gone.
Very hard for the government to hear the Timms report in 2 years' time and then start proposing controversial reforms in the last year of the Parliament. It means the Prime Minister's ability to say, you must back me in tough decisions, is, much harder next time, because it's what he said a week ago, and then he's done a U-turn. And then the Chancellor has now got to find, as well as £1.5 billion for the winter fuel allowance U-turn, another £5 billion a year this autumn in the budget. It makes making this budget now very, very...
And last week, the Prime Minister contemptuously said of his Labour MPs, these are noises off.
Yeah.
That was barely a week ago. Noises off. These noises off, 50 of them inflicted the worst defeat. And if they hadn't had that U-turn yesterday, I think the entire bill would have been defeated.
But to use
it was going the wrong way.
To use a phrase the Prime Minister was always fond of uttering, those Labour welfare rebels put country before party. And I think it could be a good moment if the Prime Minister now has to listen to other people. And he can't just high and mighty say, we're going to do this, you've got to back me, I got you elected, off we go, that's it. I think it can end up in a better place, but it's a wreck now.
But what would you do in the budget?
In the budget?
Well, she's going to have to raise taxes or change her own rules.
Or find a tooth fairy.
She can't change her own rules.
Because the markets will react very badly.
It's so clear she can't. They've just done actually quite a tough public spending round. There's no way she can reopen that again without kind of total carnage. Yeah. But she said...
When you say the tough public spending round, you mean she's imposed cuts on all of the many departments which aren't protected, so she can no longer find cuts which would raise money. And what would she do about borrowing more money?
Well, she has said that she is not going to change her self-imposed rules which restrict the amount of money she can borrow. She has to have the national debt falling.
But she's promised the country no more taxes.
But she has. But I think that the thing she will be saying, look, you can imagine what's going on in Whitehall yesterday afternoon. I mean, the interesting thing yesterday was who was leading this negotiation with all these rebels. Was it the Prime Minister?
It was the Deputy Prime Minister, wasn't it?
Was it the Chancellor?
No, they can't stand her.
It was the Deputy Prime Minister who took control with the Welfare Minister, Liz Kendall, to basically say, tell us what concessions you need, we'll make them. And by the way, the Treasury can pick up the bill. The Treasury will be saying, the Chancellor will be saying, she'll be saying, what do I do now about our fiscal credibility? She'll say the international bond markets will look at this and think we're a risky proposition. There is no way in these circumstances I can now come along and say, I'm really sorry, to pay for our U-turn on welfare, we're going to borrow more without that being very risky in a Liz Truss way. But the problem for this Chancellor is she said last November there will be no more borrowing and no more taxes in this Parliament. I cannot see how you make the sums add up now.
No,
they can't. They don't. And she's become a prisoner. They will raise taxes, and there'll be a huge row about it. But they'll probably go for higher end earners, and they'll hope that that's popular. But will it raise any money?
But to Kevin's point, I mean, when you say it could be the turning point for Keir Starmer, he has to basically say, this is what my plan is now. He has to kind of come clean about that. He can't carry on saying
he hasn't got
a
plan and he hasn't got a vision. He's never had a vision.
He's created an even bigger problem ahead for himself with soaring, skyrocketing defence spending. Where is that 30 billion going to come from? There isn't a money tree, but you're going to have to make priorities. But you can do, on welfare, look, the work coaches are a good idea. It will result in spending £1 billion, but that is a good idea. On PIP, you can go back to having more interviews, rather than people just ticking boxes.
Well, Jonathan Reynolds yesterday
online
told us that was part of the bill, that there would be reform to the system, which meant that people were not just doing it on the phone, where apparently the assessors find it harder to say no, but will do it face-to-face.
Yeah. The problem they have at the moment with that is there are 2.7 million people on PIP. It's projected to go up 1.6 million over the next 5 years. You're going to need a lot of assessors to do... Yeah, because you can't just say, computer says no. Somebody comes in with multiple problems in their life that may not have all facts and figures and financial statements to hand, reports from doctors. They all take time, and you got to get moving on it, and you got to get on top of a problem, and they're not on top of a problem. It's a bit like Smash the Gangs and Small.
Yeah, exactly. I got the Labour manifesto out again today.
It's your favourite read.
If that was in a library now, would that be in the fiction section or non-fiction section?
I think it'd be in the box, wouldn't it?
There was no...
I think there'd have to be a second edition.
There didn't seem to be...
There'd have to be quite a lot of amendments.
...any reference to PIP or cutting PIP. There's a lot about supporting people into work and supporting disabled people to work, but not a proposal to cut PIP. But what there is, on every single page, is the phrase, stop the chaos. Stop the endless Conservative chaos.
Replace it with Labour chaos.
Only a Labour government can stop the chaos. I mean, it's literally an end to chaos, and I'm only at page 9. End the chaos, stop the chaos, ending the Conservative chaos is vital. Unfortunately, if you keep announcing policies and then have to U-turn and ditch them altogether, that looks like chaos to people, and the end to chaos, which seems to be the central theme of this Change manifesto, you haven't stood up to your promises.
There were so many Labour MPs coming out of that chamber saying this is not how to govern, this is not how we should be doing it.
That's their own party's MPs saying that.
Yeah. And these are people who say we want to be loyal.
A brilliant moment when Ian Lavery, who's a North East MP, big supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, not a Keir Starmer fan, but actually it sort of boils over because he says in the House of Commons that he's seen nothing like it.
I think we've got him speaking yesterday in Parliament, Ian Lavery.
I've been here nearly 15 years. I've never once seen a massive commitment given in a bill like my honourable friend, right honourable friend, the Minister gave in an intervention, in a contribution. This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man. This bill isn't fit for purpose.
He sums it up brilliantly.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
But
Because
see nothing like it.
He's sitting in there, ready to vote against this bill, which he's been told for months is going to be taking away personal independence payments. And the Minister, Liz Kendall, has said that they're carrying on for new claims.
An hour earlier.
And then suddenly, the junior minister, Stephen Tim, gets up and says, by the way, we're ditching the lot.
Almost as an aside.
And Ian Lavery, he's obviously kind of like...
It's crazy, man.
But he has to pinch himself to think, is this really happening?
Ian Lavery is a former mine worker who went down the pit at 16, went on to be president of the National Union of Mine Workers. Blythe National, it's the industrial southeast corner of largely rural Northumberland. He's actually traditional Labour. That's what he is. He did back Corbyn, but he is traditional Labour. He once carried the bag for Harriet Harman, who's a different bit of Labour early on. He's the type of MP who has to take on surging Nigel Farage and reform in those areas. And he knows if Labour's going to abandon its traditional territory and its traditional people and be incompetent and chaotic as it does, politically, it's digging a hole for itself. But as deep as any of the pits he worked in.
But all sides agree there has to be reform of welfare, and it is now dead under this government. Well, they cannot do it.
See, Ian Lavery's constituents, I think, would think that people who should be working should work.
Right.
And they want the welfare state to be saying, if you can work, and there will be people saying, there's people on my street and they should be working, and I don't think they are. But they will also think that people with disabilities need help. I actually thought the most powerful moment was the disabled MP, Marie Tidball.
She's very emotional.
Who was speaking in the Commons. And I think you were saying to me earlier, she had introduced Keir Starmer at the Labour Party conference a year or so before. I think in his last conference speech before the election, with a big kind of paean of praise to his leadership. And this was her in the Commons yesterday.
My communities nurtured me growing up, and they taught me the values of fairness, equality, community. So it is with a heavy, broken heart that I will be voting against this bill today. As a matter of conscience, I need my constituents to know I cannot support the proposed changes to PIP as currently drafted on the face of the bill before us today.
I think, incredibly emotional.
Extraordinary.
She was born with 4 shortened limbs. I think she's the only visibly, physically disabled MP, although there is a Lib Dem with a sight dog, a guide dog, and it gives her an extra power because she's living it. She's living it. A lot of other people will know people who are neighbours, constituents, friends, in their family and so on, but she is living it, and I gave her an authority, and
they've lost losing the argument, isn't it?
They've lost the moral case. And who'd have thought in the first anniversary week of this Labour government being elected, outside the Commons, there'd be hundreds of people in wheelchairs and on crutches and on walking sticks protesting? Who'd have thought it?
Yeah. What? A Labour government.
What's a shambles?
Sounded like Neil Kinnock there, really.
They're a shambles. They're a shambles.
I know, but see...
They reverberate from one shambles to another.
In the first Blair Brown government in 97, 98, we went through this as well. Yeah. There was a problem over lone parent benefits, so there was a big rebellion. There was then kind of issues around whether Labour was going to be tough on older workers who should be, or former workers who are unemployed should be getting back to work. There is this thing on the Labour side, which there is always this worry amongst MPs and the wider public. Are they going to betray us? Are they going to let us down? All goes back to the 1930s and the national government, Ramsay MacDonald. And you have to be attuned to that. You have to understand that is the risk. But if you double down on what looks like betraying the poor and the disabled, in the end, the backlash is so intense, and that's what they're reaping.
And what about this next U-turn that we think is coming on the benefit, the cap on child benefit? They can't...
The 2-child benefit cap.
Where are they going to get the money for that?
Yeah,
well, that's going to be a major stigma. And these rebels will now can smell blood.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
they'll want more.
This is good. This is the contrast that people see, and the Daily Mail knows that. 20,000 individuals in small boats coming across the sea from France, and as we know, they will be put up in hotels while their asylum claims are heard. No one knows, says the Daily Mail, who they are, where they're from, all will have to be fed, housed and given free healthcare, and most will never leave. The bill that this is costing the country, many, many people this morning will think that's the bill that needs to come down. Kevin?
Completely.
Well, it does need to come down. Got to clear the backlog, and you've got to halt the sailings, which haven't, because the weather has been better. I think the record in a year is 45,000.
This is going to be big this year.
It may not. It depends what happens with the weather later. If the weather's getting better, unfortunately, you get more over. Until you can, smash the gangs was a slogan. And Sunak now regrets saying stop the boats, because you'll never stop the boats. You can disrupt the gangs, probably never will smash the gangs. You can probably get fewer people coming over, and then when they're over, you could deal with them quicker. Because the Conservatives used to just shout Rwanda, 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 so didn't do anything, while Rwanda didn't do anything either.
Yeah.
700
So how do we... So what you're saying is you can't stop the boats?
It won't stop them completely, no.
So the money that we're giving to France in order to stop the boats is a waste of money, Andrew?
Well, the French are supposed to be changing the law to enable the French police to go into the water to try and stop the boats as they leave. But there's already... But this is a law change agreed, and it's supposed to be coming in quite soon. But there's now talk that the French police won't do that because the French unions are worried about the safety of the French police, because the migrants will fight back.
Yeah.
Are they armed? Are they going to use guns? Of course they're not. So I'm not sure even that's going to work either.
We have a big moment coming up, though, because
there's a summit next week.
The President of France, Macron, is arriving for, I think, his first state visit to the UK since the late 2000s, so for over 15 years. And are the French going to cooperate more intensively with Britain to solve this problem or not? That will be a big question for that summit.
It should be the main question.
Well, it would be the main question for the UK, but it's not going to be the main question for France.
How long has this been going on for, the boat? I don't remember when I was growing up that
they used to come in the back. They used to come in the back of lorries.
They used to come in the back of lorries.
And that was cracked down. They cracked down on that and stopped it.
The last Labour government successfully tackled that. They used to come in back to lorries and on trains. Yeah. And if anyone gets a train through the Channel Tunnel, you're on Eurostar now, you'll see massive fences, huge sort of prison-style fences.
To stop people scrambling onto the trains,
And they used to go onto goods trains because they would slow. You'd have difficulty getting onto Eurostar travel.
On the undercarriage.
Yeah. But they successfully did it, because I spoke to a former Tory minister who says, don't bet on this government not eventually getting a handle on this, because he recalls when they did the last time.
But how do they get a handle? Because if you've got hundreds of miles of coastline, and, with the best will in the world, even if the French police really cracked down, you just can't be everywhere on that French coastline.
The only two things you can really do is, one, smash the gangs, and there's been some success, but the numbers are still coming. The people are still coming over, but there's been success with prosecutions, disrupting boats, getting some and then the other side is when people come, you process them quickly, and you decide whether they can stay, whether they can stay,
process them somewhere else,
whether they go.
Right. And this then goes. So Andrew, this goes back to Rwanda. You process them offshore.
The key word is deterrence. Yeah. At the moment, what is the deterrence?
There isn't one.
How do you persuade people not to make the trip? And the previous government said Rwanda is the deterrent. There was no sign that actually worked because they couldn't send anybody back. Is there an effective way to deter? Can you send people, if there's a decision on their asylum claim that you're not going to get asylum, rather than just staying in our country, can you send them to,
Albania?
I think you'll find the Prime Minister of Albania said we're not going to be a dumping ground.
He did say that. He did say that.
Next to the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister had said that's what we were going to do. More chaos.
See, in the case of Rwanda, it was different, because in the case of Rwanda, the previous government was trying to get Rwanda to take responsibility for actually making the asylum decision.
It was only a few hundred people a year would have gone to Rwanda rather than the 4 volunteers. If it had been up and running, it was only a few hundred. They can do their sums. Look, they're desperate for a new life in Britain. They might have family ties, language. We got that deregulated labour market. You can work here unofficially easier than in other European countries. There is a pull in that deregulated
this will become
labour market.
A massive issue. If this is going on till the election, this will kill this.
The most successful policy was the deal that Sunak's government got with Albania to return Albanians who came over. There was 10 or 12,000, and they claiming asylum. Well, Albania's in NATO. But it had a deal. Yeah. They were sent home.
But also, don't forget, a lot of the migrants are coming because there is some problem in the home situation, which is forcing people to move.
A lot of them are economic migrants too.
Well, they are, but
if you're suffering drought,
young men,
you're suffering drought from climate change and economic.
I think the Times reports a lot are coming from Eritrea at the moment.
Collapse.
But 10 years ago, big question about migrants coming from Syria. What David Cameron decided to do was to use the international aid budget to spend money trying to support people to stay in their home country rather than making the journey in the first place. Now, of course, the aid budget is rather small than it was.
Well, yeah, we're going to buy some tanks with it instead. But
maybe that's the answer.
Remember, we get very few, like 20,000, right? It's 20,000 people. Just say it doubles over the year at 40,000, just below the peak of a few years back. Small compared to net migration, but that's relatively small compared to the number of people who are, say, seeking asylum in France or Italy or Greece or countries like Turkey and Lebanon.
People may well understand that, Kevin. But the point is, here, disabled people, up until yesterday, thought that their benefits were going to get not just cut,
while illegal migrants get handouts.
I think context, though,
pensioners were told that their money was going to get withdrawn.
Context is always important.
So people here worry, don't they, that the money's not being spent in the right areas.
Context is important when people whip up this idea that Britain is exceptional and different to everywhere. And we have relatively few people coming here for asylum.
They come here because we're a soft touch.
No,
yes, they do.
Well, it'd be more.
Yes, they do. That's why they leave France, which is a safe country.
And when you say a soft...
they go into a hotel and they get some benefits.
What is the thing which is...
And then we know they've been able to work in the black economy.
How much do you get in your benefits?
We saw it with the delivery.
Not much. Admittedly,
it's less than £10 a week if you're in a hotel with meals.
But it is money spent, isn't it? Not on disabled people or pensioners.
Andrea Jenkins, the mayor of Lincolnshire, says that they should be put into tent camps in the UK rather than hotels.
Well, there was talk about having like former army camps they were put in, but all that.
Well, you know what? Because the
locals didn't want them.
No, and
nobody wants them.
Tent camps. You're really going to have tent camps?
No. Well, not currently under this government. That would not be...
Andrea Jenkins just says things she'd never do. If she's got a bit of Lincolnshire, she'd like to have a big tent camp. I mean, she could have a national tent camp.
I don't think anybody wants to see tent camps.
No, of course not. But she says it, though, and she whips people...
I know, but it's an important point. When you say it's a soft touch, paying for the hotels... What is the alternative?
We are a soft
process asylum seekers more swiftly.
That is absolutely right.
Exactly.
And make sure that if they do not have the right to stay here or that they pose any sort of risk or threat, that they then get...
And Susanna, you're absolutely right. The last government did that just because all he wanted to do was shout Rwanda.
OK, but, Kevin, to be honest, the only person who shouts Rwanda on this programme is you.
No, it's on the Mail. You can see it on the Mail. Well, read out the Mail. Read out the Mail. Susanna, that is not true. Read out the Mail.
A year after Summer became PM and scrapped Rwanda.
There we are.
You and the Daily Mail.
They are blaming scrapping Rwanda.
No deterrent whatsoever, and they're going to keep pouring across the
Before we let you go, can I just ask if you think that cyclists should be deterred from running red lights? Because that is one of our debates this morning.
They're a menace. They are a menace.
What, red lights? Red lights are very useful.
You know, I'm often on the back of a motorbike and I see how many times cycle bikes, I see it all the time now, through red lights the whole time.
So there was...
you on the back of that motorbike?
Yes.
So there was...
in my leather gear.
Police in the City of London did a kind of study on this. And in this year, up until the 31st of May, 284 penalties were given to cyclists going through red lights. In the same period, 25 motorists ticketed for the same offence. So there are more than 10 times the number of cyclists going through red lights than motorists.
And I think the difference is whether you have a registration plate or not.
Exactly.
Because I notice motorbikes. Look, I've sometimes gone through red lights when there's...
On a bike or in a car?
On a bicycle.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll do it if there's nothing around. There's no traffic around. There's a red light.
Law breaker.
But I would never do that in a car. Or I don't have a motorbike.
Plate on your bike.
It's true though. It is. You just think there's no one around.
Yeah.
It's just gone red everywhere.
There's no one
you do a
around
little
apart
left
from
turn.
that pedestrian
No,
about
I
to
look.
cross the road.
I'm a pedestrian as well. I always look out for
Lawbreaker.
Pedestrian. He's a super pedestrian.
I know, yeah.
He walks 20 miles a day, or is it 30?
Just over 11.2 I'm averaging. It's
11.2.
obsessive, I know.